I'm gonna be talking about the ENTP personality type, also known as the Inventor. And this is really the interesting part. And why I say this is because before I used to just represent the E, the N, the T, and P for itself, and I used to talk about them separately. But now I'm opening up the personality in a sense. I'm not just talking about E and T and P as a single unit, but now I'm talking about once you put the letter together, the sort of the type codes come up, the dynamics come up, the person come up, and now we can start seeing how the person thinks and how he sees the world. And for ENTP, also known as the Inventor, and I'm going to show you here to the board. I'll talk about consciousness before. I talk about 8 type of consciousness, and this is the 8th consciousness for an ENTP, and we all have them, but their positioning is different from person to person. But for ENTP, their positioning is in this format. So they have the brainstorming first, coming up with ideas. They have the analyzing, taking things apart. They're harmonizing, understand the social norms and cultural values, and I have a lot of spelling mistake, I'm sorry. And they have recalling, having past experience inform their present. And in the less conscious, the 4 is the conscious function, here is the less conscious. And we look about the free will in terms of how much access they have to those different types. You can look at it in this way. Then it starts slowing down. They have good access to brainstorming, analyzing, harmonizing, and recalling becomes half conscious, and half unconscious. What I mean by that, they are not so aware of that cognition, and they don't have that free will as other type would have. And how ENTP thinks is that basically is that ENTP, when taking information, they start with brainstorming. So what happens is that they see something, let's say a place or whatever, and the inventor obviously is called the inventor because they invent stuff. So when they see something, they take an object, and let's say this object, and they can come up with many ideas to use this object. They brainstorm ideas. Now, but when taking information, they take an information, look at the pen, and they start brainstorming ideas. But what happens when we take information, brainstorming ideas? They then use analyzing to make a decision. Now, the coupling of brainstorming and analyzing makes up 90% of the personality. That's what they say. I would say it's less. I would say it makes up 75% of the personality. But when you talk about these two, you're really talking about, in a sense, their identity. And when you have coupled brainstorming and analyzing, you put them together, you have what is called inventor. And inventor is really dangerous at inventing stuff. And I mean this if they are, obviously if they have had the normal type development and they have managed to really have access and control of the brainstorming aspect and their analyzing aspect. And what happens is that once they take an information, they see things from a big point of view, abstract, and they can see a relationship. And if we draw a square, and this is brainstorming, you see you have people here, things, event. So if this is brainstorming, they form relationship between people, things, and event. So what happens is that if something has happened over there, they can understand the consequences, what will happen over here. And a good example is the stock market. If you have a stock market, and let's say, and you read the stock market, and you can see if something happens to the oil, the consequences, how it will affect the household. That's extrovert intuition. You see the relationship. Now, you can imagine ENTP does this all the time. We come to learn and use extroverted intuition, like a bit in tiniest pieces to understand something. But for ENTP, it's really what's drive them, and it goes from one ideas to the next, and they take that ideas apart with their analyzing process. Now, analyzing process takes an object apart, redefining it. So they have this acute sense of defining something. Analyzing, a process of analyzing is really feel the sort of the essence of something and the underlying principle of something. So they provides them a framework. So you can imagine, so they have like this big abstract way of seeing, and what happens is that they analyze it, and obviously when they analyze this, it is in the service of bringing ideas into the external world. And but what often happens with the ENTP is that they go so much from one idea to the next that they might not end up doing it. And especially because the analyzing process is not really a process that wants to seek closure. It just wants to understand something. And the process that really wants to seek closure is really further down, which is less conscious for them, which is planning, you know, moving towards an aim, making that closure, making that bridging the gap. So an ENTP can really learn from other type, which has planning in their conscious function. Let's say ENTJ, for example, or INTJ, because they make things happen, and ESTJ as well. I would say ENTJ, ESTJ is the two I would take an example to sort of finish a project. And so the ENTP can learn something from ESTJ, and they can learn something from ENTJ, which has the planning in their most conscious function. So I don't know if I want to add more to the ENTP. And yeah, once they become more developed, you know, and ENTP becomes more developed and they grow older and so on, they start getting accessing more to recalling. And recalling, really, once they start accessing to it, it sort of gets it brings a stabilizing function to the ENTP, and it has to do with the recalling is really relied on past experiences. So what happens is that when a person use recalling, they're gonna hold fast to what sort of has worked in the past, and sort of since ENTP use brainstorming, they are not really gonna hold to the past. They're just gonna be driven towards the future. But once they start developing recalling, once they get a bit older, it's not gonna be perfectly as conscious as it is for ISTJ, for example, and so on. But it's still gonna make them sort of having probably sort of have their ideas and bring it to the world, basically, because now it provides their stabilizing function. It becomes more real, and it becomes that it's no longer an idea. It's just an idea has sort of brought to fruition by the recalling. In that recalling is more about basically the real world, and so on. I cannot talk for too long because otherwise everyone's gonna get, you know, it's just gonna be too much information. So I'm just gonna stop with the Inventor for there now, but I can probably say how they go about inventing. No, I'll just stop there. And I'll make videos on other types. So yeah, watch along. Thanks.